I was reading a manuscript, and in it, one of the characters mentioned Manam Tinubu, and then the other character referenced, "You mean the slave trader?" And referenced, yes, that she was whom the square in Lagos is named after. I thought maybe it was an exaggeration just based on the story. It's based on a true story. But I was taken aback, so I actually stopped reading this manuscript and immediately looked on the web to see, is there any truth to this? And sure enough, I came up with several sources referencing to Efunroye Tinubu, who was a shrewd and wealthy businesswoman as well as trader, as well as market seller. And she got so prominent and wealthy and known over Yoruba land to the level that she was a force to be reckoned with the British as well as the Brazilians during and upon the cusp of the end of the slave trade. I'll put links to a particular article that I found that detailed this on the web, but this was also confirmed in my other searches, which included Twitter as well. So it's definitely a known quantity. But this was the first time I ever knew whom Tinubu Square was named after, and more deeply, the history behind the woman. Today, what she accomplished would have been a feat, but during her era, the early 1800s, is just very remarkable. And I think that type of specifically female entrepreneurship is still strong as ever today in Nigeria. And I think it just comes from that lineage example, and I think maybe it's even in the blood, but it was remarkable. It was remarkable. And as a matter of fact, most small, medium enterprises are run by women in Nigeria, based on a survey that was taken that I heard about on NTA News Online. And so it's really remarkable. And of course, everywhere I did this search, and the question popped in my mind, and it was answered, is the former governor of Lagos State, Bola Tinubu, and current presidential candidate related to Efunroye Tinubu? And everywhere I read, the answer was no. Oddly enough, I've never heard anybody in my family or any Nigerian that I know of ever bring up this history. And I'm sure my parents are well aware of the history of this. But I think part of it is that the upside and pride from her being such an astute businesswoman and tycoon with the power that she had. On the flip side, she was a prominent slave trader in that era. And that's not something particularly today. With the shrinking of the world due to technology, the internet, and social media, also with the recent resurgence of repatriation of Black Americans in the diaspora back to West Africa. And some of the backlash, now that those individuals are learning more about their history and understand that countries like Africa did have participants that were West African that participated in the slave trade. And so I think that dichotomy is what makes it hard for Nigerians of, I would say, my parents' generation, who are aware of the history, who lived through it, to be a lot more quiet about things like this. But still, your history is your history. And to ignore it is to be a victim of it, as opposed to understand it, integrate it, learn from it, grow because of it, but move beyond those parts of it which are antiquated. I remember a picture of, I think, a postcard. It was a postcard of Tinubu Square from my parents' youth in the 60s. And I thought it was a painting, a painting somebody made up to kind of glorify what Tinubu Square looked like. And so I'm talking to my father. I'm like, oh, wow, who painted this picture? It looks so surreal, almost like a Norman Rockwell rendition. He said, no, that's actually a picture of Tinubu Square. I think it was 1965 or something. And I was taken aback. It was beautiful. Like any town square you might see in anywhere in the West that's developed, that is taken very good care of. You could see a surface trolley train. You could see a beautiful garden in the middle of the square, people walking, taxis, and it was not crowded at all. Very clear, very clear. And it was mind-blowing compared to what it was when I last was there. I think I want to say in the early 2000s. But it was touching in that, on one hand, this was a real place that was beautiful. It was a symbol of a post-independence Nigeria. And a hope that one day, like things have already been happening in Nigeria that are for the better. Specifically, it's a lot cleaner in Lagos now than I remember it in, I would say, the 90s and even the early 2000s when I visited. So you can see the arc of improvement there. And so this story, in a sense, of Madame Efunroye Tinubu reminds me of the arc we have made from a place and time where, Nigerians sold their own people into slavery, to a period now where countries like Nigeria, Ghana with the Year of Return, are welcoming back Black Americans in the diaspora, granting citizenship in some cases and conditions, and welcoming back home in a sense.